I'm Will Ripley, live in Hong Kong, and the National Basketball Association, or NBA, in the U.S., it's facing a huge backlash from U.S. lawmakers for its reaction to this tweet by the Houston Rockets general manager, a tweet backing pro-democracy demonstrations right here in Hong Kong. The NBA makes billions of dollars in the Chinese market, and it's apparently siding with Beijing, calling Daryl Morey's tweet regrettable. Despite his apology, several Chinese businesses are now suspending ties with the Houston Rockets over that tweet. The NBA's response is also raising questions over the lengths that businesses in the U.S. have to go and are willing to go to stay in favor with the Chinese government for access to the lucrative Chinese market. The response is also drawing bipartisan criticism from U.S. politicians who say the league is bowing to pressure from Beijing. Republican Senator Marco Rubio summed it up this way, saying NBA players have no problem speaking out on politics and social issues in America, but they apologized to China for a pro-democracy tweet from an NBA team executive. Hypocrites. And Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell tweeted, "Listen, some things are more important than money, like doing the right thing." Daryl Morey tweeted about human rights and supporting Hong Kong protests. How ironic that you're siding with communism to advance your greed. In the coming hours, the NBA commissioner will hold a news conference. He is expected to address the controversy surrounding Morey's tweet. His comments are scheduled just ahead of the Rockets game against the Toronto Raptors, which happens to be played right here in the region in Japan. So joining me now to discuss this backlash is CNN World Sport anchor Alex Thomas in Saitama, Japan, and CNN correspondent David Culver in Beijing. First of all, this story just kind of goes in the file of nothing good ever comes from Twitter, ever. But Alex, what are they saying there in Japan?
Well, we're due to have a super typhoon here in Japan at the weekend, Will, but already a storm of a different kind is upon us. And a bit like a real one, it's gained momentum with each passing day. When you think that Daryl Morey, the Houston general manager, tweeted last Friday, and yet here we are 5 days later, seeing the implications getting more and more potent as far as the NBA are concerned. And you're right to say it all revolves around their huge financial investment in China as a growing market, dating back a long time. And it's interesting because here we are in Japan, where the NBA is playing a game here for the first time since 2003, a 16-year gap, mainly because of a new sponsorship deal signed a couple of years ago with Rakuten. And in the intervening years, since they played all those regular season games here in Japan through the 1990s, of course, China's now emerged as a more important market. But here we are back in Japan when we should be speaking about an interesting pre-season game between the Houston Rockets and the NBA champions, the Toronto Raptors. How can the Raptors deal without Kawhi Leonard, their superstar who's left for the LA Clippers? And Russell Westbrook's back with his old mate, James Harden, at the Rockets. But when Harden and Westbrook were put before the media, including me, after practice on Monday, instead it was Harden saying sorry.
Yeah, we apologize. You know, we love China. We love, playing there. I know for both of us individually, we go there, once or twice a year. They show us the most important love. So, we appreciate them as a fan base, and we love everything, they're about.
So Harden, as a real leader of that team, understands how important this issue is. Ironic, really, that the Houston Rockets are the most popular team in China because of all the years that Yao Ming, the Chinese-born player who ended up playing for the Rockets for so many years, played a part in them. He's now in charge of the Chinese Basketball Association, one of the organizations to sever links with the Rockets, or certainly suspend links with the Rockets in the light of this controversy, leading to all sorts of withdrawals and retractions. Morey himself, the Houston Rockets GM, taking back to social media to say that it was his personal view, not that of the NBA or the teams. I was merely voicing one thought based on one interpretation of one complicated event. I've had a lot of opportunity since that tweet to hear and consider other perspectives. And you mentioned, Will, about the NBA, part of their statement reading, "We have great respect for the history and culture of China and hope that sports and the NBA can be used as a unifying force to bridge cultural divides and bring people together." I mean, the timing could not be worse. This is the first of two games later on Tuesday here in Japan, the second on Thursday, the same day as the first of two games in China take place, involving the Los Angeles Lakers and also the Brooklyn Nets, who have a Canadian-Chinese owner, of course, in Joe Tsai, co-founder of the Alibaba Group. So just a horrible sporting political storm at just the wrong time for the NBA, Will.
Over to David Culver in Beijing. And Alex, thanks for that. But David, I mean, would China have even allowed them to play, theoretically, if they didn't do this apology? I mean, we've seen so many companies, foreign companies, essentially being forced to bow down to Beijing if they run afoul with the authoritarian government there.
We have. And to Alex's point there, the timing couldn't be worse. You know, Will, because when you think about the timing here, it's the end of what was a week-long celebration for National Day, the founding of China 70 years ago when the communist state came to be. And so for them, this is an extremely sensitive time. For this tweet to have come out over the weekend, it was highly offensive as they perceived it. But as you point out, it's two separate things now. It's that first tweet that goes out that caused the backlash here in China. You saw the severing of ties with CCTV, the big broadcaster here, saying they weren't going to air Rockets games. You saw Tencent, a big company, saying they were no longer going to live stream the games. As Alex pointed out, the Chinese Basketball Association, led by Yao Ming, saying they want nothing to do with the Rockets for now. And then you had the apology, which caused a whole nother storm that's brewing right now in the U.S. And it's rare that we see lawmakers on both sides agreeing on something. But even down in the state of Texas, we're seeing two prominent lawmakers there, Senator Ted Cruz, a Republican, and Beto O'Rourke, a Democrat who's running for president. Both of them agreeing in their criticism of the NBA for apologizing. Beto using some strong words, saying that this is essentially a blatant prioritization of profits over human rights, and Cruz saying that this is the NBA essentially choosing money and shamefully retreating here. So it's causing this anger now in both countries, this geopolitical mess. And Will, as you point out, this is not the first time that China has been perceived to use profit, use the bottom line in order to manipulate free speech. We've seen that in recent happenings for airlines, for example, Cathay Pacific, even their CEO resigning after some of the employees were caught up in some of the protests that you have covered to a great extent. We've seen it with Marriott, even last year, having to apologize for their app showing Taiwan and Hong Kong and Macau as separate countries, something that's highly offensive to China, as seeing the one China policy there. So a lot of these companies are finding themselves in a very difficult position as to balancing democracy and profit here.
And it seems like money is often winning. You know, you worked in Washington. Compare the ability there, the ability in the U.S. of public figures to express their opinions to what happens if people speak out and they have the wrong opinion there in China.
It's been fascinating contrasting the two. I spent nearly 7 years covering Washington, and you can find somebody to comment on just about anything and on any topic, and there's a comfort for them to speak out. Here, even if you go back to one of the other recent headlines that we've been covering over the weekend, which was China being called on by President Trump and his suggestion that they investigate the Bidens, there still hasn't been a response to that. The responses here are controlled, they're calculated, they're done with a choreography and are highly scripted generally too. So it's not like you're just going to get general reaction or able to kind of get somebody to speak off the cuff. Even yesterday, as we were speaking to some young basketball fans, this was interesting, Will. We were talking to one teen who was kind of dancing around his words and saying that he didn't really think it was that big of a deal, but he also supported his country. And he was also looking out of the side as people were approaching, a little bit uneasy about what he was saying and what they were interpreting from what he was saying. So there was some concern even in speaking out there.
I've been on the streets in Beijing in similar positions many times, and you'll have much more to look forward to. David Culver, thanks for that from Beijing.
Yeah.
We'll check in with you soon.